Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Asbury Park Planning Board for Monday, January 25, 2021. Madam Chairwoman, please review the open public meeting statement.
I'm going to call this meeting to order, and the following meeting is being conducted by electronic means in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, amended 2020, which explicitly permits a public body to conduct meetings electronically during a state of emergency. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press. All notices are on file with the board secretary. In addition, a notice regarding this virtual meeting and instructions are published on the Asbury Park Press and the City of Asbury Park website. A copy of that notice is on file with the board secretary. The notices and conduct of this meeting are in accordance with the guidelines of virtual meetings issued by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs. Please note, please turn off all cell phones and electronic devices during this meeting. Please identify yourself before you speak at all times. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available to view via APTV. I did not state any of the items about muting and comments because we're doing deliberations this meeting, and there will be no input from the public at this point. Please join me to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
and
to the republic
which
stands
stands
one
nation,
nation
under
under God,
God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty
and justice for all.
Roll call. John Moore,
Here.
Yvonne Clayton,
Here.
Michael Manzella,
Here.
Jim Henry,
Here.
Jennifer Souter,
Here.
Trudy Syphex, absent. Alexis Taylor,
Here.
Eric Galipo,
Here.
Rick Lambert,
Here.
Barbara Krizak.
Here,
We have a quorum.
you do.
We sure do.
Barbara, at this time, I'm going to recuse myself and leave the meeting.
All right, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Good night, all.
Good night. Okay, we have one item on the agenda today. Asbury Partners, 1500 Ocean Avenue.
Yes.
The intention today is for the planning board to deliberate based on everything that's been presented to us over these past probably about a year and a half.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may, we also received a new set of notices from Ms. Smith, which Mr. Lieberman, myself, everyone in the chain was copied. They weren't required. They were just done as a matter of accommodation, which thank you, Ms. Smith, for that. So I would like to put them in the record as A77. I reviewed them this afternoon. They would be in proper order if they were required, but they're not. And I instructed Mark Siegel to put them in the official file, the hard copy that he received via email attachment.
Thank you. One other item, as we always do with these, with the meetings that are a bit larger, having to do with the attendees. At this point, from what I can see, we have under 50 attendees. So that is way below the amount of people that we are capable of handling. So if anybody else did want to attend, they certainly could, and there was plenty of room to do so. So that's just to get that on the record.
Okay.
Okay. At this time, we can start the deliberation process on this application. Is there anyone on the board that would like to kick us off? Okay. Well, there you go. Don't all jump at once. Okay, I know that we had some discussions at our last meeting that were brought up with a number of the members having to do with the the conversation about frontage, whether on the Ocean Avenue side and the boardwalk. Some people felt that both sides should be considered frontages. There was also concerns about what the fence that was proposed on the east side facing the ocean, that perhaps that's something different or something better or could be presented there. I know that there were some concerns by a number of the board members.
Yeah,
I'll go.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt someone?
no, go ahead, Rick.
Well,
I was taking notes. Okay, so I've written down a few things. I want to make sure I cover all my points, so bear with me. First, I think it's important that we thank everyone who participated in the public hearing aspect of it. There were many people with many thoughts and many ideas, and I assure them that we listened to their comments and we heard what they were saying, and I think a lot of what they say goes into our deliberations. I also want to note that this waterfront plan, redevelopment plan, is from 2002, meaning it's been around for quite a while. So some of the issues that were brought up in the public hearing have been apparent since 2002. This went before the principal development group, which was the city council, and then it went for TRC, which approved the plan, and our goal is to evaluate the development. The development has already been said to be within compliance or meet the standards of the water redevelopment plan. So we're to look at the design and creation of this use on this piece of property. So I went through the waterfront redevelopment plan, listening to what people had to say, and pulled out elements that I think are important for us to consider as we're looking at how to evaluate this plan. In section 2.2 of the redevelopment objectives on page 9, under waterfront area planning principles, one of the key elements was to prevent parking and traffic problems. And I think that's a conflict in the plan, because further along in the plan, where it talks about commercial uses and places of assembly, which it's been determined that this falls under, there are no parking requirements. So that's a conflict already in the plan with what they've established. Don't create a parking problem, but then don't require parking, don't have parking requirements for places of assembly. So I think that's something that needs to be evaluated in the future. This plan needs to be re-evaluated by the city, and it needs to be cleaned up and tightened. But we're given the task of dealing with what we have in front of us. All right. Under section 2.3, page 17, planning objectives with prime renewal area. This is under the North Shore section, and it states a private beach club will be constructed along the boardwalk opposite block 207 without restricting public access to the beach or boardwalk. I'm not sure if this is directly across from block 207, but the gist of it, I mean, in the North Beach area, there's very few places on the boardwalk where a private beach club could go. So that has been in the plan since 2002. I think it probably would have been nicer, more neighborly, more a better gesture for the developer if they had developed the public pool first, which is also referred to in the redevelopment plan. I think that would have been a nice olive branch for the community. But nevertheless, the plan does say specifically that they were going to build, that the plan allows a private beach club to be constructed on the boardwalk. Section 3.2, page 23, under open space, recreation, and community facilities, beach and boardwalk. Again, a new private beach club will be developed on the boardwalk between 6th and 7th Avenues in a manner that will not limit pedestrian mobility along the boardwalk. So I think they have demonstrated that they are compliant with the plan in that respect. They are not limiting any kind of mobility to the boardwalk. So the use itself, I think, really complies with the waterfront redevelopment plan. As for the DEP and CAFRA requirements, that's really out of our purview. That's under the jurisdiction of those bodies, and the developer has to, and they're required to. I mean, it's not even a matter of agreeing to it. They have to comply with all CAFRA requirements. So anything related to any of that is under that jurisdiction, and that's just the way it is. That's not anything we have purview over. Under section 3.5, page 47, parking in the prime renewal area. So item number 4, it says the overall plan is set up to encourage the use of mass transit into the city with quick service from the train station to the beach by jitney service. This is not going to be an easy solution, but the city has demonstrated its desire to move in that direction. We've had a transportation planner there. We've incorporated a number of programs to encourage more pedestrian and non-vehicular type activities in the waterfront area. And I think we will continue to move in that direction. However, you can't stop development just because the city has not created its overall parking plan with the jitney service and all the other amenities that would come into creating that plan to improve the parking problem that's in the waterfront redevelopment area.
Excuse me, Rick, what page was that you were referring to?
That's page 47.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. I need to take a breath every now and then. In section, okay, this is dealing with the actual design of the building. Section 3.7, architectural design guidelines. And page 59, it just refers to the modern style, which I think the applicant has demonstrated the design really reflects that kind of a modern interpretation of a modern style. I think he's also demonstrated that it reflects some elements of the surrounding architecture with the rhythm of the fenestration and certain aspects of the design material, the building material. So I think in that respect, they comply. In building articulation in this section, number 1, page 63. So this is where I begin to have problems with the design. It's the discussion of a building frontage, it says, is the frontage of a building. I'm sorry, this is page 63, building frontages. The frontage of a building is a primary contribution to pedestrian activity. The frontage is that elevation which faces a public street or public open space. To say that the side of the building that faces the boardwalk, the eastern facade, is not a primary frontage, I think is misguided. You can't get any more public than the boardwalk. And I think under the building articulation, it says it shall not extend beyond 100 feet, even though it says inches in articulating the facade could be enough to break that up. It also says scale is most effectively modified when the various integral elements of the facade support articulation, such as windows, balconies, loggias, parapets. And articulation is a compositional technique tied to its meaningful relationship to an urban condition. I don't think that building, well, I think the developer feels like he has met the requirement. I don't think he has met the intent of the requirement. And the facade that faces the east is just really a blank wall on a very public space and doesn't really engage the public in any way. It doesn't relate to the boardwalk in any positive way. And I think that facade is just as important as the facade that faces Ocean Avenue. And I think better articulation so that there is a stronger relationship between the building's use and the boardwalk is warranted in this situation. And then the building parts. Oh, this just talks about the void to solid ratio. And, in commercial, it said it shouldn't be less than 70%. And I know that the developer has created these bays where they have planting and they've articulated the facade with the kind of vertical elements against the horizontal elements. But the overall look of that facade is a large blank wall that faces on a boardwalk. There are no other buildings along the boardwalk that do that. The boardwalk is just a huge public space, and to not have any relationship or engage the public in any way is just not acceptable. I just don't think that facade serves the public in any positive way at all. So I think for the use itself, I think they've complied with, I applaud the developer for coming back many times and making many changes in relation to comments that were made by the public and by the planning board. I applaud them. I think the design is really great, but I can't support the design with the eastern facade design the way it is. I think it is just really inappropriate, and it really turns its back on the boardwalk, and it should be articulated in a way that really enlivens the boardwalk and creates activity at that space and not just a series of plantings in recessed areas. Whew. That's it. I'm done.
Rick, I don't know why you were so reluctant to go first. That was awesome.
Well, I wasn't quite finished jotting on my notes.
I just want to piggyback on what you started with. I think you hit the nail on the head that unfortunately, it seems like there's no question whether this use is permitted or not. I think it is. I think the testimony that was given supported that, and the countering testimony did not present the case that it is not. So I think, as you said, the board is kind of left to determine what changes that can be made within the power of this board. My overarching sticking point too with the design was this eastern facade, and I think there's no question that it is a frontage and that it faces a public open space, and it needs to support pedestrian activity. So I think I had a couple ideas that I think maybe the applicant could consider to improve this facade and in its engagement with the pedestrian atmosphere. One idea might be, is there a point of egress and ingress, or an access point to the building from the boardwalk that might engage the boardwalk in a better way? Another thought is to have openings at various points or fenestration. One of the other requirements for facades in the waterfront plan was a minimum 20% fenestration. So could there be openings designed in a way to allow some interactivity with the boardwalk? A third idea I think was discussed at a previous meeting was the idea of murals. Just south of this location with the former Sunset Avenue Pavilion, that's become a real opportunity for artists to display their work and really engage the public in an awesome way that I think could be accomplished here with little effort. And then finally, I think, one of the other higher uses in terms of frontages for pedestrian activity is shop front with an awning. And is there an opportunity here to create to not only have this building be built here, but then have it become sort of an amenity for the public in incorporating some sort of food service window with an awning that can, where food can be served from this property to the members of the public on the north end of the boardwalk, where honestly there aren't a lot of opportunities right now for food service. So then in a way it becomes a little bit of an amenity while engaging the public in a better way. So those are my couple of ideas for ways that the eastern facade could and should be improved.
I'd like to piggyback on that. So, they have the recesses or the setbacks with the landscaping. And I saw in New York, this building, it was a gym, I think, and it had lots of wooden, lots of wood on the facade, but then there was an opening that was actually like wooden slats. So it was more like a screen, but it was still transparent enough that you could see in there. So it gave like a semi-opaque view in there. So it seems like those recesses could be areas where some type of fenestration could be created to, it kind of sets it back from the boardwalk. And if there's the issue of people peering in, or the club wants to have some measure of privacy, it could maybe be configured so that people can't really see in, but you can get the sense that there's some kind of fenestration. And I definitely think there needs to be some kind of access and egress from that facade onto the boardwalk, even if it's just one way out and you can't really get back in or something. But there just needs to be more activity that relates to the boardwalk on that facade. It's just too public, too important a space to not have any kind of interaction with it at all. It just doesn't jive at all.
Anyone else want to step in with any?
I had a couple of comments, and I was also thinking about the east wall, and I agree with what's already been said. And I thought, is there a possibility of putting maybe reflective glass in the cubby holes? So at least when people are walking, they can look at themselves. They get some feeling of interaction with the pool club. And I was also concerned about things I know we can't regulate, but it was the operation of the club. You know, it's going to have lights. We need to ensure that there's no spillage or glare coming off the lights into the building that's across the street. And I know we discussed this the last time, but sound mediation is also going to be very, very important. But we don't know if it's necessary because we don't know what the operation of this club is going to be. We don't know if it's going to be open in the evening. We don't know if there are going to be special events. I want to see what else I had. Okay. And I also agree that it is a permitted use. And it would be my hope that if it's built, that we live up to the terms of the agreement that says within 18 months, the public club will also be built. So, and those are my comments.
Anybody else want to chime in? All right, I'll put in my 2 cents. Then maybe you guys can think about some other things. I just wanted to, I echo what Rick had mentioned about the comments that we received from the public. Have no doubt that we take them very seriously. I took a very long time. I listened and re-listened to what the public had been asking for and what their concerns are. Many hours of APTV and me. Some of the things that were the most people that were concerned about had to do with sending this application back to the council. This was sent. This was actually sent to us from the council to go to the planning board to make a decision. It is the planning board's responsibility to make that decision. It cannot be sent back. Items having to do with, I know that there were a lot of concerns about noise, hours, capacity, alcohol. All of those areas are really not within the jurisdiction of the planning board. And I know that that is very frustrating to the public. It's frustrating to us, but it's something that is really not within our jurisdiction to monitor. This is something that if there are issues, it has to go to the city administration. There are ordinances around noise. There are ordinances about hours of operation. There are ordinances about capacity and alcohol within the city administration and ABC. This is all outside of the planning board. So it's not something that the planning board can say, oh, no. Having to do with, people were concerned that this was not compliant with the master plan. That was created in the re-examination report that was in 2017. The WRA overrides that. So it's not that we can point to that and say, oh no. This is the WRA supersedes that. The stormwater management, environmental impact, all of that having to do with what we received from New Jersey DEP in the letter that we received with the approvals. The developer has to adhere to all that. and the concerns there, once again, not within our jurisdiction. Having to do with, there were questions about height that some people were concerned about. We looked and looked and looked again, and it's all in compliance with the WRA. And the sticking point is, and to me also is the same as some of the others that I've mentioned today, having to do with the east side of the building being a frontage. When we have said that the Ocean Ave side is frontage, we believe that the boardwalk is also frontage based on how many people pass by that area every day. To me also, that is the major sticking point right now. And I do like the idea of the being able to bring in some murals in order to tie in the pavilion that is there, and to give, you know, artists the ability to have the expression that they can, and it would just tie in the buildings that are there already. It would be a really nice addition. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to put out there towards the deliberation?
I just have a couple of remarks, kind of considering my own thought process about this. So kind of in public service, there are like two rules that I always follow. One is follow the law, and the second is be transparent. And I think it's really important that we as a board do both. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to deliberate so that the public can also understand our thought process. I agree. I've listened to both the public and what the other board members have said. And I've, you know, looked at various ways in which pathways in which we could deny this application, and I haven't found any. I think that it follows the waterfront redevelopment plan, and it does meet that obligation. In terms of transparency, we've had a lot of discussions about hours and operations and noise, but it's entirely been on the board side. And I realize that that is not required of the applicant. But I think the lack of transparency in revealing what constitutes kind of rights of membership, fees, everything else is it makes it a lot more difficult to say that they're being a good neighbor in the spirit of kind of like the various, even though there's no obligation to answer those things. I think that in the spirit of transparency, I would encourage them moving forward to be more forthcoming in kind of what they see, even if you don't have to with this body or with this board. Because we've already established that that's not part of our criteria by which we can approve an application. Sticking to kind of the board's jurisdiction, and this is something that Rick alluded to, I think that there are things that make it difficult for us not to approve this application that really have to do with larger kind of systemic issues. The age of the waterfront redevelopment plan, all the things that have changed, the age of the CAFRA permit. And I think that these are things that we are not a legislative body, but I think that these are things that our legislative body does need to revisit because they're very divisive for this community. And it limits the power of this board to make decisions that are about Asbury Park moving forward and our future. You know, and I think that all of us care deeply about this city and all that for all the reasons we are very committed to it. I think that we want to move forward with a vision that more completely encompasses the public sentiment. And I don't think that this application has full public support. And unfortunately, that's not something that we can judge our own criteria on. But I did hear what the public was saying. And I think it does go to some legislative changes that do need to happen moving forward. That said, again, full transparency, I found no reason or ability to deny this application. So if others feel differently, please let me know.
This is Eric Gallipo, board member. So first I should remind everyone that I am not a voting member on this application. However, I have, weighed in at several points during this this application as well. And I have to agree with several other board members that there is no statutory basis for us to deny the application, because I feel that the applicant has demonstrated their compliance with the areas over which we have jurisdiction. And I think it is important to remind ourselves that while the public has spoken to us, many of the concerns that they voice just really do not fall within the purview of this board. I do also want to echo the sentiments of several board members over the concern of the engagement of the building with the boardwalk. The boardwalk is truly the gem of, our public environment, and the way the building meets that is maybe not what we would like to see, I think, either as residents or as a board. And I think Alexis's point is that the waterfront redevelopment plan in its current form is fundamentally inadequate to accommodate how things have progressed and transformed and changed in the ways that public spaces are imagined and used, the ways architecture is meant to engage the public realm, and also concerns that we now see are clearly evident in the need for this planning board to continue around equity and access and inclusion. That does not, the validity of those concerns cannot be questioned. There are equity and access concerns that are pervasive throughout our city, the boardwalk being one of them, the beach being another. But we are unfortunately not armed with the tools in the plan to deny this application based on those facts. With that said, I do also want to bring up that the applicant did come back with a second design which removed their need to ask for any design exceptions. And I think that when the board has the opportunity to review design exceptions, we should do that with a careful mind and an open mind to understand why those exceptions should be granted. I unfortunately think the prior design was more exciting and engaging, but I understand why the applicant came back and said we can avoid those design exceptions through this redesign effort. And I hope that we will continue to engage applicants to understand how their deviations from the plans enhance our own advancing our own interests as a planning board, as citizens, as residents, and as an extension. The issue of stormwater and open space, we don't have the ability to deny this application based on those things with the evidence in front of us. And whether or not we like that, I think Alexis is correct as well, that we do have to follow the legislation, follow the law. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Eric. I did want to, because you completely reminded me that there is an opportunity that I will ask the city to revisit, which is that we could make an ordinance for more stringent stormwater standards than are applied in the CAFRA permit.
Absolutely.
And I think that revisiting that and also kind of what we allow to be built in a V zone and with an eye towards climate change would put Asbury Park ahead of a direction in which the state is moving anyway. You know, that it will soon be demanded in the CAFRA permit that there also be greater elevation for buildings that are built in a high hazard area. It's just that right now we don't have the law behind us in that, even if we know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the board have any other input that they'd like to share?
It's John Moore. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I agree, I think, with the majority of the board that the east side of the boardwalk is a public open space. And I think the majority of the board, and somebody can correct me, so I'll no longer say the majority of the board. My feelings are that is a public open space. I hear the word purview of the board. I hear the words engage applicants. I think this board has engaged the applicant to make the east side as nice as they made the west side, which they did a fantastic job. And I'm not going to forget the north or south side, because many of the public, some board members said like the north and south side are not that pretty to begin with either. And to use the phrase that the ramps or alleyways going to the boardwalk, to me, is just totally wrong. So as much as like we've asked, so that's engaging the applicants, asking, which I think is the purview of a board. Right? Does this probably meet all legal requirements? Yes. I mean, I've heard other boards like in the past, like, you know, say, I don't like the shade of pink, and I really didn't give a damn about the shade of pink. But I mean, we're all saying we don't like the east side, but we're not getting any place with the applicant. So do I agree that this meets all the requirements of the waterfront redevelopment plan? Is perfectly legal? Yes. But in good conscience, I cannot vote yes on this tonight without like the applicant at least making an effort to change the east and the north and the south side. And those walkways to me are not alleyways, and the boardwalk is a public open space. Thank you.
Anybody else on the planning board would like to make any statements?
This is Jen Souter, and I just wanted to follow up. And I appreciate everybody's comments, and I don't want to just repeat them. I agree with a lot of the comments that board members have made, and I also wanted to thank the public for all the engagement and the comments, because it's been a long process for everyone, and it's really important to have that process. I also have felt, I don't know if the right word is constrained, but the reality of the waterfront redevelopment plan, as we know, constrains us in certain things. And my primary concerns around this project were around equity and access and environmental issues, and then also design issues. Everything is a concern, but the things that I heard rise to the surface from the public over and over again. And so I also was really kind of diving as deep as I could into those issues, especially around the CAFRA permit, concerns around sea level rise, increasing intensity of storms, and all the things that we know are a reality on the boardwalk. And certainly those are all concerns still. However, because we have a compliance letter from DEP, and again, outside of our jurisdiction, I think it goes to broader issues that Alexis had brought up and others about how we have a different way of addressing those issues, hopefully in the future, and things that we can't address really through the planning board around the design issues and the issues around pedestrian engagement and supporting a positive experience for pedestrians. I actually feel on all four sides, of course, in this case, this building, as we know, is a kind of a very unique setting, and the engagement on the boardwalk side is of course important. Again, realizing there's certain constraints about a private property that we can't dictate. But I think again, I think John put it very well, that the effort that the developer could put to address some of the issues around making the building not feel as if the backside is to the public. And there are opportunities, some suggestions brought up tonight. I know that we, don't design the project for the developer, but there are certainly a lot of different ideas of how to do that, to make that side of the building have a different feel, as well as the north and the south. Because the one thing, the thing it certainly does say in the waterfront redevelopment plan is you can't impede access to the boardwalk or the beach. This project isn't necessarily doing that, but those access points become even more important. And as we all know, everyone who comes to Asbury Park, lives here, loves it. Everyone wants to have that open access to the ocean, of course. And so when any elements that can help create a more positive space, not just for the building itself, but the access around it, I think could go a long way in changing that dynamic, that it's not just something that you're coming up to, and if you're not a member, then you go around. So I think there's a few ways maybe that could be addressed. And I also did want to say thank you to the developer for coming back and making those adjustments based on some of the comments that came up from the public and the board. Thank you.
Any other comments from members of the board?
This is Lexis Taylor. There are just some things that I would like to see in the resolution if we get to that point. So I think that's probably not on the table right now, but I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to vote without having some kind of specific language in the resolution.
Understood. I think that some of us have some things we would like to add. But before we, I don't know, maybe we should have that discussion so that everything's on the table in the interest of transparency, as you say, that there are some things that I think that a number of us would care for. And if we put that in there, I would also like to, and Jack, tell me if we can do this, I'm assuming we can, that we would like to get a reply from Ms. Smith regarding all of our comments before we actually move forward. I don't know if we should have a discussion about what we would want included first or get a reply first.
I think you've laid down the issue, certainly the east facade. I think 5 or 6 members questioned it. It's in that it is to be addressed. It's in the resolution of referral on page 2 from the mayor and council, that the design and height, I'm quoting from page 2, and the now therefore be it resolved, section number 3B, the design and height of the 7-foot tall fence along the easterly property line should be reconsidered so that it'll be more visually appealing on the boardwalk side. Design elements such as mural landscaping or varying planes may be considered incorporated. So your comments are well placed, and I think we should hear Ms. Smith's response on behalf of her client, if any.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And you read my minds. I wanted to make sure that we went back to the council's resolution, which is in A53, Exhibit A53 that's been marked into the record. Just to make sure, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, A53 from January 27th, 2020.
So Exhibit A53, item 3B says exactly what you just read, that the design of the 7-foot tall fence along the eastern property line should be reconsidered, that it be more visually appealing on the boardwalk side. Such design elements such as a mural, landscaping, or varying planes may be considered and incorporated. So since the time of this resolution, which was adopted in March of 2019 by the council, the applicant has changed the eastern fence along the property line. For example, we've created varying planes by pushing the fence in to create landscaping beds every few feet, so that those beds are entirely within the property, the private property, not on the boardwalk. So we've pushed the fence in, created planting areas for landscaping. And then of course, the fence itself does have the varying planes even among the wood. So we've added landscaping, we've varied the planes. The other suggestion was a mural. We have heard tonight a few members indicate that they would potentially be interested in a mural along that back fence. I will say that under the waterfront redevelopment plan, fences are required to be made out of wood. That is the type of material that we need to use, wood, and we have proposed wood. But if the board would like us to incorporate a mural along that back fence, in addition to the work that we've already done to incorporate landscaping and varying the plane, the applicant is willing to incorporate a mural as a condition of approval.
Was mural being considered for the boardwalk side or for the north and south sides?
The council's resolution says the design of the 7-foot tall fence along the easterly property line should be reconsidered, and that such elements such as a mural, landscaping, or varying planes be considered and incorporated.
Yeah, no, I meant the board.
Oh,
Members of the board. That's okay. I wasn't clear on my statement.
I was Rick. I was considering it more for the north and south.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
There are some very nice areas there in order for us to be able to incorporate that there. But that was my own intent.
One thing to consider with the fence along the back is that the fence is far shorter than a building wall. So if you were to build the building along the rear of the property, keep in mind it would be higher if it were a building. Buildings are taller than 6 or 7 feet tall. So we've proposed the fence there. The fence complies with the waterfront redevelopment plan as far as the materials, the location.
I don't think it's a question of whether the fence complies or not. I think it's that the issue is that it's just a big blank wall that is on a very public it's on a very public space, and it just doesn't really contribute in any way to the activity of the boardwalk, which is, like someone said earlier, kind of the gem of Asbury Park. And it's just, I just think it's really unfortunate.
Rick, if I could build on that, I think the issue is not whether the fence is compliant. The issue is that there is a fence at all. I think if you look at every other pavilion, every other building on the boardwalk, they are boardwalk oriented. There are doors and windows to access active uses within those buildings facing the boardwalk. And this would be the one pavilion, quote unquote, that would stick out like a sore thumb in comparison to that. So, I think there's got to be some give and take about what can really bring some kind of interaction to this facade. But
I mean, the overall design, it really just internalizes all activities. There is really no relationship with anything surrounding the building, which is unfortunate. I drove up and down the shore over the course of time that we've been considering this, look at other beach clubs, and many of them are, you can see the activities going on inside from all aspects of the surrounding property. And the fact that this beach club just really cuts itself off from the public is just really not, it's just not a good neighborly kind of thing to do. It really, and such a prominent site to not have any kind of relationship to the surrounding area, I just think is really not good at all for the community.
Madam Chairwoman, I don't want to get into a back and forth because obviously, we've had, I'm sure we each hold our own opinions on this, but we are constrained by the plan as well. The plan tells us to build a beach club in this location. That is the permitted use. That's what's been proposed. We know that the beach club, for example, can't go onto the public beach, right? Because it's specifically as a condition of the use, we cannot impede access to the beach, right? So we have certain constraints we need to build within as well, even just the size of the overall lot. The lot size is what it is. So we've designed a project that is a permitted use, that meets all of the criteria. The council, when they sent us here, indicated that the board could reconsider the fence and ask that the board look at varying planes, landscaping, and murals. We've varied the planes of the fence. We've added landscaping to the fence. And if the board would like a mural, we're willing to do a mural as a condition of approval. But we have to build what the plan tells us to build. And we believe that we've complied with every aspect of the plan and that we've put that before you as a board. And respectfully, if it complies with the plan, the board doesn't have the authority to turn this application down.
I have a question. So in the plan, when it refers to frontages and when it describes the frontages on a public space, and the interpretation, I guess, by the developers that the boardwalk is not a public space, so that's not really a frontage. What's the dynamic as far as determining, what's considered frontage and what's not? The interpretation of that regulation. I mean, I don't know how you can say the boardwalk is not a public space.
Let me jump in.
Sure.
You got two issues to be considered. One is whether or not it's frontage, if within the definition within the plan, and number two, if it is considered frontage, is this a permissible treatment of that frontage under the plan? So the threshold question is whether or not it's frontage. That's a decision that I think we should get some input perhaps from Jason, who's read the plan, who's the planner, and he can tell us whether he believes it's frontage or not. And then secondarily, is a fence a permitted item to be incorporated within the frontage? Obviously, I read that section to the referral ordinance, so there was knowledge about a fence plan back at the council mayor and council redevelopment authority when they looked it over. And I think that's what you have to look to. A, is it frontage? And if so, has what has been proposed, does that comply with the plan? You may have a different opinion as to, you may want more or you may want different, but whether or not it complies or not is another issue. So I think you need to determine first whether or not it's frontage on the east side. And if so, what has been proposed, is it in accordance with the plan or not? And then you can go from there.
All right, Jason, if you could help us out with the frontage?
Yeah, Jason, before you do that, you're going to give an opinion and I'm going to have you sworn. Do you solemnly swear testimony about giving this matter with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Jason Fitchter, board engineer and conflict planner.
Okay.
So in terms of the frontage, looking at the redevelopment plan, page 63, I agree with what everyone has said. There's a gray area there to interpret, but I think the bottom line is it says frontage is an elevation which faces a public street or public open space. I think the boardwalk can be considered a public open space. So as far as I interpret this plan, I think this is a frontage that faces a public open space and deserves the treatment as such. So when we read down further, let's see, page 63, number 6 in the right-hand column, it talks about base frontages that are permitted. And this really goes to the heart of what everyone has been saying that I've listened to so far, which is the application complies with the plan, and I'll explain, but it's more about the fine details of it and can the aesthetics be improved. So number 6, it lists out A through H, different options for what a building frontage is. And of those options, the last 3 are not permitted. One of them is a fence. And that is not one of the ones that's not permitted, or to say it another way, a fence is permitted as a frontage. So that is why I believe the fence that's put there complies with the plan, even though it faces a public open space. I think the discussions here center more around what the fence looks like and how it's treated and how it engages that boardwalk. I think it's a finer detail of how it can be accomplished, but by strict letter of the law, it seems to me that that fence complies here. There's another interesting thing that hasn't come up tonight, but has come up in the past. There was some discussion about the building as viewed from the boardwalk. And there's an interesting distinction in that number 6, that same number 6. One of the three, let me find it now. Yeah, option F under number 6 is a blank wall. That's one of the prohibited options for a frontage. And I don't think that's what we have here. The interesting part is that there are 2 options. One is a blank wall, one is a fence. So the plan has distinguished between the 2. And the applicant has proposed a fence along that frontage facing the public open space. So as far as I'm concerned, the discussion is not so much about whether the fence is permitted. It's not even about whether it faces a public open space. I think it does, but yet it complies. I think the discussion is centered around what does that fence look like and how does it interact with the boardwalk?
Rick, does that give you any clarification?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that we do agree that it complies with the plan, the strict letter of the law. It's just that I feel that many of us are, I'll speak for myself, that I think that we can do better. Though yes, it does comply.
I feel like it doesn't meet the intent. It may meet the letter of the law, but I don't think it meets the intent of the design guidelines. I don't think the intent was to have a blank wall 200 feet long abutting the boardwalk. I just don't think that's what was in the mind of people when they established those design criteria.
Anyone else?
I think this is Jen Souter again, that one line about the supporting pedestrian activity. Yes, there's room for interpretation, and I understand that there's language, in saying even on the western side that if you have landscape front yard, I think is the language that works. But there's still a difference between creating a place that doesn't feel like, again, your back is turned to the boardwalk. There's a difference between engagement and something that the way that one line is, I don't think that either side or any of the 4 sides supports pedestrian activity and engagement. And so I think the definition of what that means, and to the extent that we can improve that, is where my question really lies. And then my other question was around the fence height. Did we have any, I know we've had a lot of discussion about the fence, and I couldn't find back to whether there's any, it meets the requirement, but is the height, are there any issues around the height of that fence? Or any room for change, I should say. Because I think the comment about the fact that a building would be higher is true, but a 7-foot fence still has that same effect of having so it has to do with the comment that some board member made before about the possibility of having, views into it, and that I understand is a choice, but it's the engagement factor again of whether or not you're inside that building, whether there's engagement. I think the word engagement is something that has been, left out.
So I'm going to follow up Jen's comment with a suggestion, and it may not be the opinion of other people on the board, but I think even in the design of a fence, now you have to design a breakaway fence because it's part of the construction code requirements, but they're ornamental fences that are kind of in and of themselves engage through their artistry. And one way to do that is let's say you could still achieve the privacy of a fence while having kind of like horizontal slats that allow for light and air to come in. And what that does is, rather than creating just a pure barrier between the public and the private, you still are, it's not a view shed. You're not able to like see in between, but even imagine like you see it on the side of buildings, kind of like Eric can help me, but like kind of passive panes, right? That allow for light and air to go through. And even that is more interesting and more interactive. Like a horizontal fence with like very small slits that aren't necessarily meant to be view sheds, but it's still more interactive with the public.
Yeah, Alexis, I was even thinking, vertical separation between the fence pickets that, maybe are so small that someone couldn't stand on the boardwalk and like just watch people inside, but still allow that and sound like you were talking about to kind of pass through and have some level of engagement, even if it's like, very small slits, vertical slits.
It's more, I have a question for Jason. If you go to back what you went to on the right-hand side of page 63, 6D, it says a fence and porch. It doesn't say a fence or porch. It says a fence and porch. This does not have a fence and a porch.
Yeah, fair point. I didn't interpret it that way, but that's a fair point.
And I think that's part of this, Jen Satter, again, what I was getting to about the height, because when I read that, when I read porch and fence, it means something different, very different to me. Again, just my interpretation than a 7-foot fence. I was thinking more of a front yard type feel where you have, access, views, and you just physically can't climb in there.
I'm sorry, one thing to note, there is a pool here, right? So there's a safety aspect as well. It's not a matter of just lowering the height of the fence and opening it up enough. There's a pool, and that does become a safety aspect. And there are requirements for making sure that there's a fence around the pool so that you don't have people accidentally go in the water, like a child wandering the boardwalk ends up in the pool.
Could you elaborate on the requirements of a safety fence around a pool?
Well, what I'm saying is it's not a matter of we can't get rid of a fence, right? There has to be a fence. So, and the fence that has been proposed complies with the plan. We looked at the plan says to put a wood fence, we put a wood fence. And it sounds like what the board is asking now is for the type of wood fence to be changed out. Am I interpreting that correctly? Or is it a matter that it's
not a blank wall? That it like we're giving you ideas because that's how we work, but we're giving you ideas to make it not a blank wall.
I think the concern is the perception of that as being a monolithic material across the entire frontage of the east facade, as well as the north and south facades. Now, do I think art might help the north and south facades? Yeah, all of the buildings up and down the boardwalk, their north and south facades are relatively blank and not, there have been some attempts to make the retail wrap around the corner to varying degrees of success. So, the north and south facades bother me a little less because it's a condition that we're quite used to. And it's also quite a small distance relative to the entire length of either the east or west facades. So, Mr. Handel is a world-renowned architect and is certainly capable of interjecting something that would either create a greater amount of play between shade and shadow, depth and relief, materiality, things that actually moved or interacted with the wind. There's any number of ways that he could address that specific issue with art. Yes, all of those are good answers, but we can't decide. We can't sit here and say this is the right one. I think the concern, which has been noted by more than one board member, is that it isn't achieving the level of interactivity and engagement that is more consistent with the rest of the facades or the rest of the planned facades all and up and down the boardwalk. And I'm sorry if I stepped on anybody's toes there.
What I'm trying to do is take the input and understand that if there were to be a change to the type of fence, if that is enough, or is it redesigning the entire project? Is that what the board's asking, to redesign the entire facade? There's been a number of different suggestions. Every person has had their own suggestion. And what we have done is we've designed a building that complies with the plan. We understand everybody has opinions on how it could be different, but we've designed it to comply with the plan. And if this were a question of the type of material of the wood or changing somehow what the wood looks like, which I will say it is not a wall. And I know you've had lots of testimony on this, that the way each board of the fence turns, one faces out, the next one is, so it goes, perpendicular to each other, one after the other. And then the fence itself comes all the way in to allow for landscaping beds. That's all been in testimony. So it is not one structure. And those are all improvements that were made after we heard comments from the board and the public. I think what I'm hearing is everybody has different opinions as to how it could be different, but that it complies. And we're in a position where we've been before the board now for almost 2 years with a project that complies. And we've revised the facades and we revised the fence and we've changed many of the details. We added bicycle racks, we changed the front stoop. There's been many changes along the way to get to a project that complies. And that's where we are now. If it's a matter of adding murals, my client is willing to add murals. But I don't think we're in a position, unless he tells me differently, I don't think we're in a position to redesign and resubmit and continue to go through this process where we're designing and submitting, particularly now after 2 years, and where we've come to a fully compliant project.
So
I see a certain mischaracterization in that they're all different opinions. I actually see us, a possibility of us converging on a similar opinion that could be held in the resolution. And just a general characterization that it's a complete redesign. I guess I'll offer this to your client. It seems like we're arguing just on the basis of the public, but there is also something to be said for whoever is inside the pool, that the boardwalk is the most exciting thing happening. And I don't know why you would want to be behind a wall in which you could not, even if not visually, but in some way interact with the boardwalk. So I think it goes to both sides. I'm just saying, I know you're pushing back on us, but I think you're really missing an opportunity.
And I think you're just missing I get that you keep saying that you comply. I get it, but that's not, I don't think you're meeting the intent of the regulations. And, I agree with Alexis about the people inside. It's so internally oriented, and you have this beautiful beach, wonderful boardwalk that has absolutely no relationship to the interior of your space. And to even get to the boardwalk, if you're from the inside, you have to walk out the front and walk all the way around the building. There's no way to even get to it from inside the building. So I just, I don't think we're saying anything now that we haven't been saying the entire time this has been going on. This has been a concern, and the applicant knows it's been a concern because they've attempted to make some changes to it, but the changes have been still in line with keeping a 200-foot wall that's made of wood. It may not be, there may be breaks, recesses, but it's still a 200-foot wooden wall along the boardwalk that has no relationship to anything that goes on the boardwalk. There's absolutely no relationship at all it doesn't interact with it. There's no engagement with the community to get inside the building. You have to walk all the way around to the other side of the building. I mean, there's literally, it's as if it could be anywhere. It doesn't even appreciate the fact that it's on the boardwalk. It doesn't even see the boardwalk as an amenity that it could use to improve, the amenities that it provides to the pool club members. It's just completely ignores its presence on the boardwalk. I feel passionate about it.
Ms. Smith, would you like to reconsider?
To be fair, it's a little difficult for me to converse with my client during the Zoom call. If it were possible to take a 2 or 3 minute recess, so I have a chance to actually give him a call, since we're not in the same room.
Motion to recess.
Yes, we can take a 5-minute recess if you need, or whatever you need.
10-minute.
Okay,
Wanna
now
take a
who
minute?
move a 5-minute recess?
All right.
Alexis?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was, Alexis moved it?
Yeah, I move it. Sorry, Alexis.
And the second was? Barbara? John Moore?
Yes.
Yvonne Clayton?
Yes.
Michael Manzella?
Yes.
Jennifer Souter?
Yes.
Alexis Taylor?
Yes.
Rick Lambert?
Yes.
Barbara Krizak?
Yes.
And did I miss someone? Erica Lipo?
Yes.
Okay, we stay in recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Call the meeting back to order. I'll take the roll. John Moore?
Here.
Yvonne Clayton?
Here.
Michael Manzella?
Here.
Jennifer Souter?
Here.
Alexis Taylor?
Here.
Erica Lipo?
Here.
Rick Lambert?
Here.
And Barbara Krizak.
Here.
Okay, we're back on.
Okay.
Okay, Jennifer?
Okay.
Oh, Jennifer Smith then.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you to the board for giving me, thank you. Thank you to everyone for making a few minutes to do that. That is one of the difficulties in a virtual hearing. You can't simply look over your shoulder and ask your client what he'd like. So I appreciate the moment so we could make that phone call. After hearing everything tonight, my client is interested in looking at the fence and looking at ways to change the fence and the design of the fence. Now, to be clear, this is the expectation of the board shouldn't be that we're going to come back and redesign the whole project or the whole building, but we are willing to look at the fence line to see if there are, ways to still comply with the plan, but to change the design of the fence. To that end, though, we don't want to go through this endless process of us putting something up and we think it's what the board wants and it's not what the board wants, and we spend 3 hearings on it, we come back and do it again. So what we would like to do in the interim is be able to sit with your board planner, Mr. Fitcher, and if Michelle Alonso, or if there's someone else on the professional staff who would sit with our professional staff and have a discussion, we would appreciate the opportunity to do that. So when we resubmit, we know we're resubmitting something that is not completely off base. Now, of course, each board member is going to look at it independently. I know Mr. Fitcher doesn't speak for the board, but we at least would like the opportunity to kind of come up with a design, resubmit the design, and have the board review it. Because again, it's been 2 years and we don't want to spend 7 more hearings talking about fence planks. So if that's a possibility, what we would ask is that we be able to sit with the board's professionals. We'll then resubmit a revised fence line plan. Along those lines, if the board's inclined to do that, we would then ask to have this carried not just 1 month, but perhaps 2, because knowing that we have to submit with enough time for the public to be able to see it, but 1 month isn't enough to have that conversation and get it back in and get it reviewed timely. So if that's amenable to the board, we'd ask you to hold your consideration for this evening and allow us to see if we could take one more shot at addressing that rear fence line to see if we can come up with something that will meet with at least some of the board members. approval.
And I think that I would also suggest that there are some board members that are a bit more passionate, have some ideas, more ideas than others that probably are very helpful, that maybe they would also be able to take a look. Obviously, no quorums. Obviously, there would be like whether it be Alexis, whether it be Mike, whether it be Rick. Now, I'm not talking about the whole board. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm just talking about,
I
having.
mean, possibly the design review committee.
Yeah.
You can bring it to the design review.
Well, I was going to ask, is there a way to do this in the resolution compliance or no? Okay.
No, because it's too subjective and it's too open and there's not enough direction. So we would go around and around. It's much simpler to do what's being suggested. Have a subcommittee or design review committee. And if you want Jason to attend, you have Jason to attend. And let the design review committee, who are your representatives, do that process with the applicant and go back to the drawing board and come back with something that's better.
If we bring in, I know that you'd suggested our board planner, perhaps Michelle Alonso, if that's what you'd like. And then the people that are in the design review and meet first. Maybe that we could do sooner than later.
Well, we first have to, yes, I guess we would get some input and then work on a,
Right.
But I don't think it'll be a month. I think just it might be putting this on the agenda for 2 months down the line so we have time to address it. And again, the applicant is not suggesting that it's going to redesign the whole project.
No, I don't think that's what the board wants at all.
Limited issue. I'm sorry, Rick. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just talking. Go ahead.
It would be a limited issue and the hearing would be a limited issue hearing, limited just to what we're discussing now and the fence along the eastern frontage.
That's
or
it.
the wall, whatever treatment you're going to bring in, that's it. We're not opening up Pandora's box at all. Not at all. It would be very, very tightly controlled to the limited issue before us.
Don't throw out the north and south.
Well, I was just getting ready to say maybe the issue of the murals could be addressed with the north and south to limit the amount of redesign that the applicant is willing to consider.
I'll bring that to my client. Right now it's the fence, but we've heard you on that.
I think the fence is considerable, so thank you. The murals, just so you know, in the past we have approved kind of conceptual, but ultimately in the resolution we say that goes to the public art.
Our committee, yes.
And so ultimately, we actually would not be approved. A concept of the murals would be fantastic, but a condition of the resolution anyway is that you'd have to go to the public art committee. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's what we always do. It always goes to the public art committee.
That would help with the design of the mural.
And
Right.
Jennifer, thank you for contacting the applicant and thank him for agreeing to reconsider or to hear discussion about it. It's very much appreciated.
Understood.
Would it be of any use at this point for us to, I know that Alexis wanted to put something into some of the conditions that maybe, is that something we want to talk about? Just so that we have some idea of what they might be? Or would you like to hold down until
That's
we?
kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, let's face it, every waterfront redevelopment project gets a standard set of conditions for all of them. CAFRA compliance, built according to the plans, reviewed and submitted to CAFRA and approved by CAFRA. There's a whole bunch. There's a litany of them that have been in every single resolution that are just, they're like reminders of what you have to do. Then we might get into a couple of specific conditions, but those might be developed later on. You might have more after you hear about the fence. I don't know.
How from a logistics standpoint, how would the DRC meet with, like, how would all these parties assemble? And
Typically we've gone through the board secretary. And in this case, it would be more than likely Michelle Alonso because Irene is not around, and they're coordinated meetings
Yeah.
between
Right.
the.
And we social
And I think
distancing
Barbara,
and
you
masking up and all that.
No, it would be a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, yeah. It's not going to be in person, but it's.
Oh,
it's
it'd be
gonna
a Zoom. Okay. I didn't
And
know
think
since
there are
we're,
members of the board who have sat in on these types of
Okay.
committees in the past, correct?
I'm down with that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we're also clear that at this point the first available is April 5th. Even though we did have one in February, but I know that you asked for one extra month. And May and March is booked unless we do a special meeting. The first available opening is April 5th.
That's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
as much as we'd like to get back here in February, I don't want to create an unrealistic timeline.
Okay.
April 5th is okay.
It would be without further notice, I assume. And we would need the consent of the applicant to extend the time under the MLUL.
We will extend the time under the MLUL to April 5th.
Okay. And so we need a motion that in essence would refer this for the fence issue along the front and possibly discussion of the sides, any potential aesthetic treatment there, between the applicant, staff, our staff, and the design review committee. Is that essentially
So moved.
properly characterized?
Yes.
So that'll be Rick Lambert.
Second. Yvonne Clayton.
Okay, second. Okay, roll call. John Moore,
Yes.
Yvonne Clayton,
Yes.
Michael Manzella,
Yes.
Jennifer Souter,
Yes.
Alexis Taylor,
Yes.
Eric Gallipo,
Yes.
Rick Lambert,
Yes.
Robert Krizak.
Yes.
Motion carries, matters adjourned without further notice to April 5, 2021.
And it's at 7 p.m. and it would be a
That's
virtual.
7 p.m. without further notice. So the public that's listening, be aware that's when this is going to take place.
And that the Zoom information will be posted on the City of Asbury Park's website, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, as always.
Okay. Well, then we will see you back on April 5th.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night, Stuart.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
That would be by Eric.
Yep.
Second.
Alexis, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.